Hello, today I'm going to chat to you a little bit about how to pass arguments into decorator functions to extend the capability of your decorators. Things I'm not going to go into are what is a decorator, how do they function, just looking at talking about how to pass arguments into a decorator function. If you are interested in following along, there's a link in the description to a repository on GitHub that contains this source code, and you can check out the commit history, see how the code evolves from the state that we're starting with into the final state with the properly decorated code. So to start off, just going to go through what some of this code is that we are going to be working with. Here we have a simple data structure, an array or a list of dictionaries, and then two other dictionaries that we will be using to filter out some of that data. So I have four functions defined here that go through print out listing of information into the command line and then add a new line after each list. In the main function, I'm printing out a heading. I'm printing out a separator between the heading and the listing, and then I execute each function. So if we look at the base functionality and we run that through here, we can see, let's see here, let me get rid of my face there. So we can see that I'm printing out a nicely formatted data into my standard out of heading and then characters, and in this case the roles that they have on the team. If we go back and look at our code, you can see that we have a lot of repeated code, and we're kind of violating that do not repeat yourself. Also, if we want to change the formatting of the table, we have to go into each and every function and edit that to fix how those things are going to be formatted. So in order to start out, I'll use a decorator pattern here so that I can start to add. So I can start to remove the repeated code. So I'm going to start out with trying to remove this new line that's happening. So we're going to define a simple decorator here called heading, that takes as an argument, since it's a decorator, it takes the function that it's wrapping as an argument, and it's going to define a new function that's going to add functionality to whatever function that it's modifying. So we're going to say new function here, and then we're going to execute our function there, and I will return my new function. But I'm not returning it executed with the parentheses. I just want to return the reference to that function so it can be executed by the interpreter. And just to see that this is still working, we're going to decorate this with heading, and I'll put in a print statement so we can see that it is indeed adding functionality to our code. So here I'm going to say decorated. Now if I go in and I run that, you can see in just our first one, the only function that I decorated, the word decorated is showing up, meaning that I'm injecting functionality with the decorator. So if we come back here, we look at this. Well, one, I want to get rid of that. So the piece of functionality I am trying to remove or simplify into a single place is this addition of a new line after I do that. So I'm going to add in the print just right after that, and that's going to allow me to get rid of all of these blank print statements. So I'm just going to delete all of those at once. And now that I've deleted those, I need to decorate the rest of these functions. So I'm going to add the decorator on the top of each of these functions at heading and at heading. Also notice that this is incorrectly named, so I'm making that wiser. All right, so now I can come in and run my decorator function, and great. I am now seeing a new line that's happening after each output. So I've started on my journey of not repeating myself in Python. Huzzah! But I still have all of these characters with the separator going on, and I want to be able to pass in an argument to my decorator that says, this is my heading, print this heading out. But I can't add additional arguments because heading, as a decorator, already takes this function as its argument. So I need to wrap the heading function, the heading decorator, further. I need to add one more layer, and the top layer is what's going to be able to add and scope the argument that it's coming in. So I'm going to keep that the same, and I'm just going to take in an argument of message. And now I want to indent that, and I'm going to change this name to decorator, and I then, at the end of this, I'm going to be returning deck. And that's going to allow me to keep the decoration capability while being able to pass in custom arguments with my decorator. So in that instance, I'm going to say print message. And I should spell that with a T and not a G. All right. And let's get rid of our, let's hold on for a second. I've got to put these in here. So this heading I'm going to say is characters. This one is going to be roles. Here we have weapons. Here we have stronger than 6 because I'm comparing it to 6. And this one is wiser than 6 because, again, I'm comparing it to 6. So that will allow me to get rid of my heading. And here we go. Stronger than 6, wiser than 6. All right, so now let's come in. We're going to run this again. So when we look at that, our heading is now happening after the separator. And since it's happening after the separator, that's not the behavior I want. I need that separator to happen after the roles. But all of these separators are different sizes. So just for the time being, I'm going to take a shortcut, and I'm just going to say print equals equals equals. So I'm just going to print out 3. And with that, I'll be able to get rid of these print statements here. Because I'm going to allow my decorator to take care of my heading separators. So we'll come over here, execute the code again, and now my header happens first, then my triple equals, what's happening underneath that. And it doesn't look super pretty, it's not well formatted, so I'm going to go and utilize a feature of Python strings where I can just multiply a single character by the number of times that I want it to repeat. So I'm going to take that and multiply it by the length of the message. And now when I execute that, now I get the formatting that I was looking for, where I can change my header dynamically, where I can say characters from Buffy, and no matter what I change this to, my decorator is going to take the argument of the message, print out that header, then it's going to dynamically calculate the length of the separator by how many characters are in my header. So looking at that, my characters from Buffy is nicely formatted. If we look at our stronger than and wiser than, those two functions though, they're hard-coded. I don't want a hard-coded comparison. From a utility standpoint, it's a single-use function with this magic comparator. I want to be able to pass in the target that I'm looking for. So rather than comparing it to 6, I'm going to compare it to the variable target. In wiser, I also want to be able to do that. And that's going to be target. And then let's just pass in 6 here and 6 here. All right. I'm going to run this, and we're going to get an error because I'm now putting in a positional argument into this function. But if we look at our decorator, there are no arguments in the function and no arguments that are being passed into that. So when Python runs this, it's not going to be able to pass those arguments in because we have no place, we have no variables in order to hold those. And a lot of functions can have a dynamic number of arguments and a dynamic number of keyword arguments. So just to watch that fail, I'm going to run that. It's going to go through, and the ones that don't have arguments are able to print out just fine. But once we enter an argument, it says, hey, that takes 0 positional arguments. I can't handle that. You passed me the number 6, but I have nowhere to store that value. So we're going to use another feature of Python, which is to designate the arguments and keyword arguments of functions so that we can dynamically pass those around. And then I can pass in args and quargs, or keyword arguments, through there. Now when I run this, we're not going to have that error. Great. Fantastic. But we run into another little issue here. Now we're running into an issue where I have a dynamic comparison that I'm looking through here. So if I change this to say list stronger than 8 and wiser than 2, if we run our code again, it outputs correctly in terms of what the target is. So great, the function works. However, my heading is hard-coded in at 6. So since I know I'm going to be changing those values, I'm going to take my heading and I can actually format that right here on the spot. I'm going to use the string formatting capability to say I'm going to pass in and replace that modulo D with the value of target that's being passed in. And I can do that by accessing the argument because I have a handle on those. So I'd be able to say, all right, perform the string operation with the value of the argument that's in the first position. This is for example purposes only. I understand there are many other ways that we probably should be doing this. So I'm going to separate or replace. I'm going to do a string replace for that value, which is fine for our dynamic headers. But when we have headers like this that don't have any string replacements, I know that's going to fail. So to anticipate that failure, I'm just going to say try. Try to do the replacement. But if you fail, then just print the message itself. Don't worry about doing any string separation or string formatting, string replacement. Now when I run this, I'm getting those dynamic values and dynamically changing the value of the header by doing the string separation. I'm not getting any errors that are happening. So it's a way that I can utilize the decorator pattern to pass in dynamic information that can wrap the function, add additional information, and I can lessen the amount of times that I am repeating myself in my code. It's an important concept to understand how and why things are happening like this. When you start utilizing frameworks like Flask or Django, the decorator design pattern is used extensively to pass information to underlying systems, to set routing information and pass all of the handling of the network to functions that are being invoked in the decorators. So thank you so much for joining me on this. I appreciate you checking this out. Again, if you want to follow along or check out the source code, you can go to the links in the description to find the repository where that is kept. Thank you so much.